filming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
this is the, my skirt.
You okay?
Yeah, I just leg of my skirt. Yeah,
I
no,
can-
no.
I can't. You,
It's okay. I'll turn.
you might.
I'll turn.
You sure?
I'll turn. I'll turn. I'll turn these.
If
I'm
you-
good. Going into what time?
We should just,
Hello?
we're gonna go to 7:30.
Because I break fast.
Oh, you do?
7:50.
You just tell me when we on. Good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight, and we are so delighted that you can join us here at this California District 8 Congressional debate. I am your host, Dr. Lamont Francis, and for the next hour and a half, I will be hosting this wonderful debate. We have wonderful panelists that have come here all the way from Northern California in hopes of gaining your vote to be your representative in Washington, D.C. And so we are thankful that you can tune in with us tonight. We want you to go ahead and interact online. We want you to be positive, but most importantly, we want you to listen to what the candidates have to say so that when you go into the booth that you make an intelligent choice of who's going to represent us for this congressional district. Tonight, I am pleased to go ahead and introduce a new organization in this particular area. You may not have heard of it, but the organization is called Building Black Political Power. And the acronym is B2P2. And our objective is to become the political liaison of the Black and African descendant residents of Contra Costa County. Also to ensure the agenda of the latter communities are achieved by elected officials, to ensure the accountability of elected officials of the latter residents, and make sure that our interests are being met for those people of African descent. And so we are delighted that you would tune in with us tonight. So tonight we have a wonderful panel of candidates, and we want you to give them your undivided attention. We're going to start from here. What we're going to do is we're going to give each of the candidates 90 seconds to do an elevator speech and introduce themselves to the public. And then we will start all the way to my right and then go all the way to the left. And then after that, we are going to get into the questions that you want to hear about. And so we are so delighted that you can join us here. And so we're going to start with Mr. Rutch. He is here, and he's going to introduce himself, and then we will come back around. Mr. Rutch.
Okay, thank you for that invitation to come to this event and for your organization, Building Black Power. And also thank you to the church for offering this space. My name is Edwin Rutch. I'm the director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. And for the past 14 or 15 years, I've been working very diligently on creating a more empathic society. And that is really to address the social divisions and the polarization that we have in the country right now. The continuing polarization is a really deep concern for me because it's creating a dysfunction and an ineffectiveness in our society and our culture. So I was, one of my inspirations was Barack Obama, who during his campaign, he talked repeatedly about the empathy deficit in our country. And that is what I'm working for and to address with my candidacy. And I have a lot more to say about that, and I think that's my time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Riley.
My name is Chris Riley. I am the son of an immigrant from El Salvador. Both my parents actually met in the U.S. military. And I'm a first-generation college graduate, first-generation law school graduate, and I am currently a high school teacher in the East Bay. I am running because I think there are too many voices in our communities and in this nation that are underrepresented at the highest levels of government. And I think there are too many voices that are ignored at the highest levels of government. We have a Congress that I don't believe has been working for the people for at least my entire lifetime. I'm a millennial, and I think that young voices have been drowned out. I think that Hispanic voices have been drowned out. I think that black voices have been drowned out. And I think nothing is going to change until we start electing new leaders that are focused on the future and are focused on our communities and the diversity in our communities. Because we can't expect anything to change in our government or in Congress if we continue to elect the same people over and over again that have achieved nothing for us over the past 20, 30, 40 years.
Thank you. Ms. Sarah.
Good evening. Buenas noches. I'm Cheryl Sareth. I've spent the last 30 years working, living, volunteering throughout this district. I'm a mother, a negotiator, a contracts manager, and I'm your neighbor. I am excited about running to be your congresswoman in this district because this is my home. I'm not seeking this position as just another job. This position, representing this community, is a combination of the work that I've been doing for 30 years. This position is one that is meant to represent the people, listening to the voices of the people. Si no se es sentada a la mesa, no se puede establecer las prioridades o la agenda. If you're not seated at the table, you cannot establish the priorities or the agenda. Too many times we have people coming into our communities telling us what we need instead of listening to the voices of the community. I have spent my entire life in my entire community doing just that, and we are here tonight to listen to you and the voices of the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rosselli.
Hi. Hello. Hi. My name is Major Rudy Rosselli. I'm a retired Army major. I've served in the military for 26 years, and after that I served with USDA for another 7 years. I've got a total of 33 years worth of government experience working at the highest levels, and being able to, and in my time in the military, in the last 12 years, I spent working at, up at the Pentagon level, working at the National Guard Bureau level, and understanding the way that our government works and how we're able to find and appropriate those appropriate monies for different programs, and then get those monies out to the various places where the money is needed. The big reason why I'm running is that all this experience that I have working in the government, I was working for the government, but not for the people. And I've got this experience, and it's the people who need the work, who need the help. It's the people who need to be able to get things done. So I want to take my experience and find the needs of the people and have those needs met, and ensure that we've got accountability for those monies, and ensure that those monies get to the appropriate places.
Thank you. And now we have introduction, 90-second introduction from Mr. Dimlis Johnson.
Thank you so much. As mentioned, my name is Dimlis Johnson III. I currently serve as a city council member in the city of Richmond, California. Just to give a little bit of background about myself, I am a fourth-generation Richmond resident, which means that not just myself, but my parents, my grandparents, and even my great-grandparents reside and are from District 8. And that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to run for this seat. After reaching out and hearing from different community leaders about what we need throughout District 8, whether it be in East Contra Costa or West Contra Costa or Solano County, and looking at my record as a Richmond City Council member in regards to fighting for housing equity, fighting for reparations and inclusion, is something that I would like to bring to the national level, especially as we have the only district in Northern California made up of majority people of color. We need proven champions to go in and make sure that they can fight and represent our needs accurately, and not what they think we need, but what we know we need. And so in that, most definitely proud to announce my candidacy for Congressional District 8, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson. And so, rules of this debate, we will give each candidate 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes to answer the question. They don't have to take the entire 3 minutes, but we'll give them 3 minutes to answer the questions. If they so choose, they can give up their time to another candidate. We're going to try to get to as many questions as possible in the time allotted. And we will not have any cross-talking. This is going to be a civil debate. So if you're looking for a reality show, tune in to another station. All right. And we're going to start over here, Mr. Dimlis Johnson. Why are you running for this congressional seat in District 8, given that 62% of the population are people of color? So why are you running for this seat, and given that 62% of the people that live here are people of color? Mr. Johnson.
I'm running for District 8 because, as I mentioned before, it's not just my home, it's the home of 4 generations of my family and friends as well. And so when I look at District 8, I take it extremely personal. I don't just see a map made up of a group of cities and municipalities. What I see is where my friends live, my family live. As a Pittsburgh High School graduate, a 4th-generation Richmond resident, you know, I know the residents of these cities personally. And so I can't help but take District 8 personal. And as you mentioned, it's, you know, made up of 62% people of color. And given my experiences throughout the district and various communities, you know, I really feel as though we need someone who understands that there's a proper way to enter a space, be in a space, and leave a space and represent that space as well. And that is something that I've been doing since being, not just being elected to Richmond City Council, but since a student at Howard University, where we, you know, protested and made sure that other underserved communities had voices. And that's exactly what I want to continue to do as a representative for District 8.
Thank you. Mr. Raj.
The reason I'm running for this district is that I see the foundational problem in our society is that there's a lack of empathy and listening. And that's why I'm wearing this t-shirt, to really say it really loud. Empathy, we listen. And I think that is what is needed in this society right now. It's needed in our district, it's needed in our communities, it's needed in our country. It's very analogous to a house with different rooms. We have different issues, we have different topics in each of those rooms that need renovation, and we need work on those. But at the very foundation, if the foundation of the society and the house is not built solidly, if the foundation is falling apart, if divisions are cracking the cement, if polarization is weakening the foundation, then all the different issues, all the different issues that we're working on and want to solve will not last and not stand. If we have different people polarizing, if we have Congress not listening to each other, we have the Democrats and the Republicans not sitting down and talking to each other and listening to each other, it's like nothing gets done. It goes on for a decade after decade, and it's getting worse. It's not getting better, and I see nothing that is showing that it is going to get better. Because if we just keep on this same trajectory, the Republicans and the Democrats think that the other side is going to overthrow democracy, and we have our democracy that is really in peril here as well. So what I want to do, the reason I'm running in this district is I want to bring people together. That was the first thing I did when I started running. I reached out to the other candidates. We had what we call an empathy circle. We have a process for sitting down and having constructive dialogues. Chris and Cheryl both joined me in an empathy circle. We talked about how can we bridge our social and political divides in our society. We had a great conversation. I feel that they're friends. I feel that we connected with each other. We had a great conversation with each other. We invited, Rudy couldn't come. He did want to come, but because of scheduling, he couldn't come. We had John Garamendi, who we sent 10 emails to John Garamendi, and no response, total brick wall. And that is exactly what is wrong with Congress right now. The sides are not talking to each other. We have to bring the sides together. And I've been working on this topic for the past 14 years on how do we bridge the divides. We have a lot of practices and a lot of processes for doing it, and we are doing it. Our campaign is about doing it.
So, growing up, my parents were already out of the military, but it's something that Rudy knows is you get used to moving every now and then. So my parents moved a lot growing up, all around California, Utah, Arizona. And I've got to experience, a lot of different cultures and ways of living in America. But after college, I came back to the Bay, and I was working throughout San Francisco, Richmond, and Vallejo. And, during the 2016 election, I said I need to be doing something more than just this regular day job. I decided then and there that I was going to do more with the talents and the brain and the family and the support that God gave me. So I decided to go to law school. And, when there, I was trying to prepare every day. And even in law school, it was me, 2 other Latinos, and 1 black person, surrounded by a bunch of white people. And it's just, we have so much ability in our diverse communities that isn't being realized. So I came back and I chose to make Vallejo my home. I chose to make this my home of all the places I've lived. And that's why I'm running here. Because living in the Bay Area and experiencing the diversity and the culture and everything, it really makes you want to fight what's been going on for so long that's been keeping our communities in debt or in poverty or without fair housing or without the ability to move up in life. My mother moved here because of the Civil War in El Salvador and because she believed in the American dream. Because the American dream doesn't just say that I'm going to do better for myself, but I'm going to do better for my kids. And my mother and father worked their butts off every day to make sure that I could go to college and my sister could go to college, and we did that. But now as I look at the younger generations, I am so frightened from them that the American dream isn't attainable anymore. We're burying our young people in college debt. They have no chance at buying a home or starting a family or moving where they want to be. There's so many issues that are affecting the younger generations that the current Congress isn't listening to. And I tell people from the other party, I say, it doesn't matter to me if what your political ideology or political party is, because I guarantee you, your entire life, your representative hasn't cared or wanted to listen to you, no matter what your party was. We need representatives that will listen to the 51% that elected them and the 49% that did not vote for them. We need people of color. We need indigenous peoples, everybody to in our communities, be represented at the highest levels. And we need a representation that represents us and our diversity.
All right. Mrs. Sutter, why are you running for this congressional seat? 62% people of color.
You don't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to run for Congress. You don't do it. Some people might, but I don't. You don't. You get a phone call. I did. Got a phone call. I talked to Miss Latrice Alford, and I talked to former Mayor Billy Brown, and I talked to former Mayor Elihu Harris. And they told me about this new district. And they said, all the work that you've been doing, all of these years, this almost 30 years, we have this opportunity. And I said, I want to think about it. There's no thinking. We have this opportunity, right? So I started thinking about it. When I was a little girl, I also grew up in a military family. But I grew up in a family that valued work ethic. Yeah. I grew up in a family where I watched my abuela and my mom work in the community, and they proved that one person with good deeds could really change the world. So it was never about just regular volunteer service. It wasn't about if, it was about when. So every Friday we were there packing bags for military families. And I started as a young Girl Scout at 4 or 5 years old, and I went all the way through high school, and even today, I'm an adult Girl Scout leader. And I mentor young girls, over 2,500 over the last 25 years. And from whether it's my elected position or it's the 4 commission positions, whether it's traveling around the world when I was working from Sony and Siebel and Mass and Technologies, Department of Energy, Department of Justice, Department of Defense, negotiating billion-dollar contracts around the world, living in 12 countries, has led me to this day. As a black woman, Latino woman, Middle Eastern, Native American, and yes, even white. This district, someone looked at my DNA and said, Cheryl, yes, the 62% is you, and even the remaining 38%. This is my home. I chose this place. I didn't grow up here, but I've lived my entire adult life here. The people in this district are my neighbors, they're my friends. When we had problems with ICE, I stood, put my body on the line out there in Martinez to say, you're not taking our neighbors. If you're not gonna give us services, you're not gonna give us a prison. If you're not gonna give us jobs, you're not gonna take away neighbors. I do the things that people talk about, I get done. And that is the kind of congresswoman that you will get with Cheryl Sudeth. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Vaselli.
So my mom came here in the 1960s with the American dream as being what she wanted to achieve for her family. She came here by herself. She immigrated here by herself. Left my father and my sister back at home. And then eventually, it took her 16 years to eventually get the family here. And she swore that oath. She swore that immigrant oath to be an American. And I know that we are a diverse country. And I know that we are a melting pot of all kinds of people, no matter where we are in the United States. But we are all American. 12 years after she swore that oath, I swore that same oath. And in that oath, it says that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And that Constitution of the United States is a durable document. It's what has made it possible for everything that we have in our country, good, bad, ugly, and indifferent. But without that document, we don't have a country. We could have that document and be in the middle of a desert, and it's still America. And we are still Americans, and everybody's an American. And with my experience that I have working in the government, we need people that are there that can find the resources to support our communities. And our communities need to talk with our communities to find out what the community actually needs and garner those resources and ensure that those resources and those funds are gotten to the people. It's a really difficult thing to be able to do, but working up in the government and in federal government, it's not an easy task. And there's a whole lot of swamp creatures up there that are willing to tear you down and take you out. And you have to be able to resist them, and you have to be able to find a way to get those resources for the people. No one's ever going to take that oath away from me. And I will defend the people, and I will do my best to make sure that our district is as prosperous as possible, because everybody has the opportunity in this country to live the American dream. And we've got to make those opportunities available to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Here's what we're going to do. Thank you so much for these wonderful answers. Let's go down to 2 minutes. And so we're going to try to squeeze in as many questions as we can. We're going to go down to 2 minutes for each response. And because this is a forum that was designed for building black political power, we're now going to move into questions that specifically deal with the African American community. Given the disproportionate number of African Americans that are out of work, Mr. Johnson, what legislative bills will you introduce to provide job opportunities for black residents in Contra Costa County?
Thank you so much for that question. And I know that in Contra Costa County, the unemployment is at, I believe, 20% with a 3.5% growth rate at this point. And so when it comes to African American community, I want to really make sure that there's an opportunity to enter just about any workforce that African Americans are looking to enter into, right? We shouldn't pigeonhole any group into entering any type of labor force. But when it comes to some of the things that are happening here in Contra Costa County, around construction and around infrastructure, I look at organizations like Bright Futures in Pittsburgh and Richmond Build in the city of Richmond, and how that extends employment and training opportunities for individuals who are either just graduating from high school, coming home from incarceration, or just looking to do a change in skill set. So that's one aspect of employment and training that I think is really important, especially for the black community. One thing that I was able to do in my first year as a city council member was work with Senator Skinner's office to get major appropriations for the Richmond Build program, and ensure that they can continue to recruit from the black community and other communities of color. In addition to building and construction trades jobs, I want to make sure that our young folks are ready to enter the STEM work field and other work fields that require a college education. So of course that means making sure that our education system is ensuring that our kids are college ready. And so these are just some of the things that I think of when I think of employment for the African American community. We can't just pigeonhole, and I know everyone isn't going to go to college, and so we have to make sure that we have, prosperous routes for them. For example, my mother, my stepfather, and my brother are all union workers. And so for me, I understand the importance of these kind of jobs, whereas myself, college educated, finding opportunity in the Bay Area was somewhat difficult. And so, just using my own personal experience, going out there and making sure that we can recruit more industries that have more focus on hiring African Americans as well, I think is going to be very important.
All right, Mr. Rich.
So to have good jobs, we need a good education system. And what I think is missing from our education system is relationship building skills. I've been working, as I mentioned, on these relational skills based on mutual listening and empathy. If I would have learned these skills back when I was in school, I would have been so far ahead in terms of the education and jobs. So what we need to do is start with a different type of an education system, and the one I'm proposing and supporting is based on human-centered design. Now, human-centered design is a project-based education system. It comes out of Silicon Valley. It's the processes that Silicon Valley uses for designing any product, services, or anything that you design. It's a set of skills for learning to design those processes. And there's already quite a few schools. I think there's like 30, 40 schools in the Bay Area that already teach it from the ground up. So we can start teaching a different type of a process. That process says anything you design, any work that you do, you first need to empathize and listen to the people you're designing for. And you can have a mutual dialogue and understanding with them. Then you come up and you find the problem areas that you're needing to work on. You go into a phase of creativity. And from that creativity, you create rapid prototypes and innovation from there, and then you start the process again. So it's an iterative process. It's a process that the high-tech community is using, and that is how we can start teaching the skills within this community, in the schools, to have these, teach these skills for more entrepreneurship and a better workforce.
All right, Mr. Riley.
They're both absolutely right that education is a big part of it. As a teacher at a school that is 95% people of color, this is something that's really close to my heart as well. And changing the type of education is important, but we also need more funding, more teachers. We need more people from the community that can actually afford to live in the community they teach in, because we have teachers that, you're coming out of college with $60,000 in debt, and you're going to take a $40,000 a year job when your rent is $3,000 a month. I don't know how you do that. And we have teachers fleeing the state, and we have people who are, we have classes that are just being taught by long-term substitutes or assistant teachers. I'm teaching AP Calculus, and while I love teaching these kids, I'm trying to help them as much as possible, I shouldn't be teaching AP Calculus. I should be teaching government or law or something else, but that's what they needed. I was told that they had a need and that these kids had no teacher to teach them. So I took it. And we need to fix the credentialing process in this state. We need more funding federally to come for teaching. But that's only the first step, and that's going to help the younger generations as they're coming up right now. We need to support black businesses, black business owners. We need to make it easier for them to get loans to start businesses and create their own jobs. And there's so much that we can be doing when it comes to job training and education. All of these should be, I believe, we should make education free, because not only does it help our communities, not only does it keep us out of debt, it gives our companies a better trained workforce. And it makes it possible for people to be teachers without worrying about the $1,000 a month they're paying Sally Mae, or the $1,000 a month they also have to pay the federal loan service providers. There are so many things that black people, black communities and people of color can be doing that would be easier if they didn't have so much dragging them down at the same time.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Sutton. Let's talk about legislation to provide.
Questions, so I make sure I answer your actual question.
Okay, well, legislative bills, which you introduced, to provide job opportunities for African Americans.
So, understanding everything that everyone else just said, I'm going to answer your actual question, because I took some notes here. So, unemployment cannot be low in the black community if it's not low national.
Okay.
Because the black community always lags behind the national figures, first of all. Secondly, no disrespect to anybody up here, but I know that this is what I've done. When I worked for Google Industries International in a division that worked with Department of Justice, Department of Defense, I created these jobs. Okay. This is what I did. I created these jobs over 14 years for people with significant disabilities and people with disadvantaging conditions. Thousands of jobs over those 14 years. And one of the things that I know that we have to do is we have to get creative with that. You have to create opportunities in the community. No, loans not to black businesses. You have to get them forgivable grants so that you build them up. Loans don't help us. That put us further into debt. And education, while education is great, not everybody wants to go to traditional schools. I went to Spelman College, I went to University of Illinois, but not everybody wants that. We need trades. We need to be able to put them into opportunities that fit their mold and their value. The other thing that I want to bring up is that We have to stop looking at these one-size-fits-all. Construction industry, the Central Labor Community is one of the biggest perpetrators of economic racism in our communities. They don't let our community, especially black men and women, into the trade halls. So the first bill is that if we're going to give you government funds, you are going to have black and brown women in your trade halls. If you do not have them in the union halls, if you do not have community benefits agreements that are going to stipulate that black people are going to have some of those contracts, that black small businesses are going to have a portion of those contracts, you will not get those funds. That's the first bill I will introduce. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. I think we need to take up a collection. All right. Mr. Rosselli, how will you provide jobs for African Americans living?
Sorry for making you follow that.
It's not a problem.
No. Mr.
It's always
Rosselli.
good to follow somebody that's very passionate because it gets people fired up and gets people thinking. So the big thing is about legislation. We have to get legislation in there which to create enterprise zones. We need to create more enterprise zones for all kinds of different businesses, no matter who you are, whatever type of business that you're going into, and make it possible for people to be able to start those businesses, because if we can start those businesses in our communities, we give people the opportunity to strive to make their community better. If we can make it possible for small businesses to rise up, if we give them those opportunities through tax incentives, and if we give, for example, being able to give Pittsburgh, Antioch, Richmond, and say to the city councils, hey, if you're able to create a tax incentive, we can help your cities out with a federal grant, or reduce their the taxation that they may be able to have. Because if we can reduce taxation, then that's going to build up different businesses. We can talk to the unions about the same types of things. If you have a more diverse workforce, then the businesses that you're supporting, they can have a lower tax base. By having a lower tax base, they will be able to hire more people in the community. So in supporting the trades, and not just the trades, but the arts, we need to support the arts. So having a bill out there which supports the arts will make it possible. A building like this cannot be made unless if you have an artist. A car cannot be made unless if you have an engineer with an artistic mind. You cannot create food unless if you have that desire to make it. So we need to support the arts, we need to support the trades, we need to support education in general, but we need to make it so that if you send your kid to school, you could get a tax credit. And if you have that tax credit, that's going to lower your tax rate.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Rosselli. All right. We're going to talk about education. And that's something that is very dear to me. It's been an educator for the last 20 years and currently a school administrator at Mount Diablo Unified School District. So we're going to talk about African Americans in education. We're going to start with Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, we know the state of African American students and all the school districts in Congressional District 8, whether it be Antioch, whether it be Pittsburgh, Mount Diablo Unified, Fairfield Sassoon, Vallejo Unified. We know that African Americans are more likely, students are more likely to be suspended than other kids. We know that they are more likely to finish at the bottom in terms of their test scores, English language arts, whether it be mathematics, right? So we understand all of these issues of disproportionality that African American students face. So, a question for you and all the candidates. What changes do you feel need to happen in the school districts of District 8 to increase successful student outcomes for African American students?
I love that question because one of my first jobs coming out of Howard University was working at Richmond High School as a school community worker doing just that for African American students. And what I learned from that experience is you have to get really community schools and really being, when I say community school, of course having the programs, the wraparound services that help students. You know, if you worried about your food, your clothes being on the side of the sidewalk, or eviction, you can't learn, or if you're hungry, you can't really focus in class. In addition to those things, we have to be willing to put our money where our mouth is. Okay. Yesterday, I spent a good portion of the day in Sacramento lobbying for AB 2774, which is a bill by Keela Weber, which would give more money to local control and accountability plans for African American students because they are the lowest achieving subgroup. And that's something that we need to see happen from the federal level as well. We see too much underinvestment at the early education level, at the K through 12 level, and especially at the higher education level, where it has turned into an ability to pass to ability to pay. That's how you get into college these days. And so for me, when even talking about suspension and expulsion, we look at early education, which is my job today. I advocate for early education and preschool funding at the state level. We have to be willing to pass bills like Blanca Rubio is passing at the state level with AB 2806, which prohibits the expulsion and suspension of students, especially students of color, if you have not sent them to any type of mental health or social services, trying to get to the root issue of their problems. Also in that, we need more culturally competent curriculum and teachers. If our students are really going to succeed in education, then they have to be willing to see themselves in education, and not just in the classrooms, but also in the curriculum. If our students aren't able to understand that math was actually started in Africa, or that their history actually is more expansive than their history doesn't start with 1619,
okay,
then that is something that we most definitely can build stronger students.
Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson.
Okay, before I talked about the issues being, the analogy of a house, that we're renovating the house, and we need to work on the foundation. We talked about the room for the jobs. We talked about the room for we're talking about the room for education. And again, it's about the foundation. And I think that what we need is, for one, to build that foundation, we need people involved. And we need processes and ways that work effectively. So right now we have 10 people in this audience. We need this to be 100 people here taking responsibility, saying, I want to take responsibility. I'm going to do something. I'm going to get my butt down here. I'm going to take action, and I'm going to make something happen. So that is what we're going to need, is mutual responsibility, come together, and we need to find forms and structures that work for bringing people together. A debate is not the best effective tool. This is what we're doing right now. It's the same process we've been using politically over and over and over again. It's not working very well. What we brought in, we did what we call the empathy circle, where people sit down, they have long-form discussions with each other, talking about topics. So we can do the same thing for every issue that we're talking about here. We can bring the community together we can bring the community together on this topic of education, and everybody take responsibility. If you really care about educating your kids and other children, you got to take responsibility, and we can come together and dialogue with each other about that and come up with innovative ways of doing that. And it really is going to start in the schools, that in the schools we need the relationship building tools. We need the students to come together to learn these skills and how to dialogue with each other, how to listen to each other, and how to take constructive action together. So it is about getting everyone involved, and that I'm going back to the foundation again, because we do have to start at the foundation to deal with these problems.
Thank you so much, Mr. Riley. You're an educator. I'm African American. At the macro level, what do we do? Help the African American students.
We have to start young. Universal pre-K.
Okay.
That absolutely needs to be a part of this nation, building our infrastructure and education going forward. Extending the child tax credits. Childcare is too expensive. There's so many things that go into it. And then when you get to the collegiate side, the group that has the most college debt 1 year after graduation is Black women, with an average of $46,000 in debt after an undergraduate degree and $72,000 after a graduate degree. We cannot continue to let minorities, people of color, pay twice or 3 times for a degree what people with means are paying. Over the life of a loan, for my loans, I'm going to be paying 2 or 3 times, what the loan amount was originally, because of the ridiculous rates that not only our government but private loans are allowed to put on these student loans. And it's ridiculous that just because someone doesn't come from means or is from a minority background or person of color, that they're paying more for an education so they can advance their life. Going back to younger, our students in schools, we need more teachers. We need our school facilities to look like cathedrals or gyms or something beautiful that children are excited to go to. I look at so many schools and they're run down, and I wouldn't want to spend time there. And we can't expect our children to keep going to these places that we don't. If we don't care about it, how are they supposed to care about it? If we don't care about their education, why are they supposed to care about it? You know, they see their government not caring. They see their communities trying but getting nothing done. We need more minorities in positions teaching, in leadership positions at the school, in administrative positions. And then we need to show the younger students that there is possibilities for advancement, there is hope for them, and that education is not something that is just wasting their time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Martin. Mrs. Sutter, what are we going to do at the macro level to change the educational outcomes of African American students? We need to do something to show their brilliance. What do we do?
So, I'm running for Congress. I'm running for Congress.
Okay.
So, I'm going to tell you from a congressional level. This is a federal level, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So, from a federal level, what I would say is that you have to work with the Department of Education. And you have to put in some measures into place that changes the way the federal government, the Department of Education views what is excellence in education. So when you view excellence, you have to start viewing it from who's failing rather than who's doing excellently. So let's redefine what excellence looks like in education. Okay. So if the people who are not doing excellent if we use that as our measuring stick, that's how you start. So if the black students are failing, and those are the ones who are not faring well, if we say until they are faring excellently, then we are failing in education. Right. So redefine what excellence in education looks like by the ones who are not doing well. Instead of saying there's a gap in education because the black students are not doing well, we say until they are doing well, we're going to redefine it. You start by uplifting the voices of the black students. Talk to them instead of talking at them. We spend way too much time telling them what they should know instead of talking to them and saying, what is it to you what does excellence looks like to you? What would be your measure of success? Number one, hire, recruit, retain black teachers and support them once they get hired. What does that look like? Hire black administrators, and then what does it look like to support them and make them excellent? Right? Then we need to make sure that we are doing everything possible to uplift the fact that educational justice depends on racial justice. Racial justice is educational justice. If we can't have that conversation, we cannot have a conversation about educational justice. It starts with HBCUs. First policy that I will uplift is we need to fund our HBCUs. We don't do that, we're not going to have educational justice. Sir.
Thank you. Mr. Roselli, come on, help the brothers and sisters out. What do you need? What do we need to do?
It's always so great following Cheryl because she always gives me a good introduction, good lead-in. And she's absolutely correct. At the federal level, the one thing you got to know is show me the money. That is a problem. Show me the money. And how do we make that money get down to our education levels? How do we get that money down here to the district? Well, one thing I know is that my nieces and nephews, they live up in Seattle. And the schools up there are sponsored by Boeing. They're sponsored by Microsoft. They've got robotics programs. And their kids go to college. Why? Because those corporations are sponsoring those schools. We need to bring that same type of incentive to corporations here to start supporting our schools in our district. We need to start attracting those large corporations to start supporting our schools here. They need to start recruiting from our schools here. And how do we do that from a federal level is we create an incentive for them to do that. If they are supporting a school, they can lower their corporate tax burden. If we can make it possible, we need to get the community as well involved. Because our children, it's the parents' responsibilities, but it's the community that needs to provide the environment so that the children want to succeed. And when they leave and when they are a success, we need to invite them back to show everybody that this is an example of a person who left here, became a CEO, who became a basketball star, who became a lawyer, and is successful, and is going to come back and help the community. We can make it possible so that businesses that create after-school programs get those tax incentives to help lower their burdens, and so it makes them want to do these things. And by making them want to do that, then you're helping the community, and the community is helping itself.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Rosselli. That is great. Great answers. Okay, so we're going to move away from candidates. We're going to move away from education. We're going to move to health care. All right. So we're going to start over here with Councilman Johnson. Councilman Johnson, what legislative bills would you introduce to ensure the improvement of health care for African Americans living in District 8?
Yes. When it comes to healthcare in District 8, we all know the disparities around African Americans being the leading cause in diabetes and cancer, and for Black women, breast cancer. And so for me, the type of legislation that I would like to propose, it has to do more around funding for preventative care and making sure that there are more resources in our communities, because especially in West Country Costa, we don't have a full-service hospital. But one thing I have noticed is that we do have a network of clinics throughout District 8. And although clinics aren't, the ideal source of health care, we have to start somewhere in terms of low-hanging fruit. And I want to make sure that not only just community health clinics, but also school-based clinics. Because for a lot of low-income Black students, that is sometimes the only interaction they have with any type of health care. And so these health centers are really good at preventative care, and also we have to make sure that we're keeping up with chronic diseases as well, making sure that they're equipped to keep up with chronic diseases. And so when it comes to legislation, for me, it's about making sure that we are properly funding Pittsburgh Health Center, Antioch Health Center, Lifelong Medical Center, the West County Health Center, so that way, while we're on our way to achieving a full-service hospital, because that is most definitely the end goal, we're not going to ignore low-hanging fruit to make sure that our community remains healthy, especially our children.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, we're talking about what we can do with Congress, what kind of bills we can get through. If you've noticed with Congress, hardly anything is getting through Congress. The ACA, Obamacare, just barely squeaked by. It just barely stayed relevant. It was almost overturned and defunded. And it's an ongoing issue that we have, that without the sides, the Democrats and Republicans coming together, we're not going to get any of these ideas, any of these visions through. We can have great ideas, we can have great plans, but nothing gets through Congress. And so we need to make a real effort. I want to bring a culture of empathy to Congress, that we require congressional representatives to talk to each other every week. Every month, they're going to have 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats come together with each other and take part in an empathic dialogue with each other on how they can bridge the divides with each other. So we need to get the sides together. And this is not just pie in the sky kind of stuff to bring the sides together. We have the empathy tent that we have taken ever since Occupy Wall Street. We took out this tent. We offered listening out on the streets to people. And then when Trump was elected, we took this tent to the rallies where the political right came to Berkeley and the political left came out, and they had knockdown, drag out, bloody fights where they're throwing explosives at each other, and it was bloody. We were there with the empathy tent, setting up on the side there, listening to both sides, say, come into the tent. We're here to listen to you. We're not here to judge you. We're not here to demean you. We're bringing you together. And we did. We brought both sides together, and there's a documentary. If you check my website, edwinforcongress.com, there's a video of that mediation where we brought the political left and right together, so we have experience with that.
All right. How do we improve health care for African Americans in District 8?
So the Affordable Care Act was a good start. It wasn't the bill that Obama wanted, and he couldn't get more passed. He wanted that public option, but they couldn't get it done. And although it looks like we have, less people are uninsured now, but it's not easier to access healthcare. So many people, even with insurance, cannot access healthcare. I had insurance that was supposed to be good for my employer, and I still had to pay a $400 copay to go see a doctor if something was bad. And because of that, we don't have preventative healthcare. We have people who will wait till the last minute until something's really bad. We've turned our entire healthcare system in the United States into a giant ER, which is the most expensive type of healthcare there is. We pay more for healthcare than any other nation. We need to work towards a Medicare for all system. We need to make sure that if we can afford to go to war for 20 years in 2 countries and get $30 trillion into debt, then we can afford to make sure that people in our country have the health care they need and deserve and should be their right as an American. We should not have to choose between a life of debt or our death. We should be catching cancer in stage 1 and treating it and saving lives instead of waiting until the last possible moment to go to the hospital when it's stage 5 and people are losing family members and being left tons of debt from their family. Medicare for all is what not only the Black community needs, but all communities, working class families, everybody. It should not be a business where somebody's making profit off of the health of others, off of the injuries of others. It should not be a for-profit industry. It should be an industry that cares about the person and gives respect to all people, because we all deserve to live a life that is not dependent on how much money we have.
All right, Mrs. Sudduth, what do we do? What legislative bills would you introduce to improve improve health care for African Americans living in District 8? What do we do?
So I support Medicare for all, number 1, but I support it with an equity component so that you don't just get a medical card, but you actually have true access to medical care, and you have healthcare centers within your district. Absent that, it's something that we can do right away, an actual bill that we can do right away. Is something that I've worked on with Alliance for Girls. What this pandemic showed us, and this is actually listening to the people in the district, listening to young women tell us what we need. And these are young Black and brown girls, something that's very elementary that most people don't think about, but women think about, is a bill that says no tax on tampons and pads. No tax on tampons and pads. That's a bill that I will enact right away, and making them free in all of our educational schools. And when school is out, you still can go by and get them, because that's something in hotels and restaurants and schools, because it's something that when you are living in poverty, you depend on. So that is something that's right away, something that I will do. No tax on these kind of supplies that working mothers need. And when you're breastfeeding, that pad that you put into your bra is something that you need. And most people don't know about this, because 67% of Congress and men, they don't know. They don't have any need for tampons. They don't know about it. But that's something that we can do right away that will ease the burden on many of us. Free test and screening for prostate cancer, for breast cancer, for cervical cancer. Those kind of things we can do, and guess what? It doesn't have a Republican or a Democrat or no party preference attached to it. Those are things that the Black community needs and that we must have. And those are bills that Congresswoman Sudduth will make sure we have. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Rosselli.
So, in support of your bill, if we were working in Congress together,
Yes, sir.
one of the big things is that, again, show me the money, because we got to find it somewhere. Medicare for all of this, the question is who's going to pay for it? It's always a big thing. But how can we do this? Because you know what? We need transparency. We need transparency in our medical system. Because the people who are spending the money is not the patient.
Okay.
People who are spending the money is the doctor and the insurance company.
Okay.
They're the ones who are spending the money, and they're deciding how much aspirin goes for. They're the one who's deciding how much a surgery is going to happen when it's not really their money. So we need transparency in our medical system. And if we're able to get that transparency, then what we can do is now you don't have to pay $200 for an x-ray. You can go down the street to the x-ray lab and get it for $5. Okay. Because we can create that competition for those type of services and make it possible throughout so that way they can donate to a nonprofit. And if I were to donate a case of feminine products, then I could get that big tax write-off for it. Now that would lower my tax income for it. Hello? So if we're able to create those things and create those America is one of the most prosperous, most giving countries in the world. And those who have oftentimes give to those who have not.
All right, thank you so much, Major Roselli. Okay, so as we are the questions will be a little bit more direct. So you have 1 minute to do the best you can with these questions. Let's start.
Page document that looks at everything from housing reparations to universal basic income. Enterprise can be held accountable in not just the United States.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. Mr.
Okay.
French, are you for or against reparations for African
I am
Americans?
for an empathy reparations. What I see is that there's a slavery was a lack of empathy. Women not having the vote was a lack of empathy for women. When the Constitution first came up, it was like if you didn't have property, you couldn't vote. That was a lack of empathy. So what I say is this country has a huge empathy deficit in the country. And what we need is reparations to address that. All of those lack of empathy that we've had between each other as a country, that we should spend that money in doing empathy training, building relationships with the country and putting money into that in education. So I am for a huge reparations for the lack of empathy that we've had in our society and healing that and putting money into it.
I'm going to say something that a lot of politicians probably don't say. I don't know yet. But the issue is because they're not letting us talk about it on the big stage. They're not arguing about it on Congress. And I want to say yes, and I do. But at the very least, it deserves the conversation at the highest levels, because we haven't heard the conversation. I haven't heard the conversation. A lot of people haven't heard the conversation. I think the answer is probably yes. But I think that we need to be open to the conversation, whether we know or don't know it. And I am open to learning, because we don't know everything. And I welcome learning more from the Black community and telling me and educating me, because this is not something that I have had the luxury of having great conversations that build knowledge yet.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Riley. Ms. Sudduth, are you for or against reparations for the African American community?
We are in the house of God, so I'm going to say it.
Tell
Be
the
real
truth.
good.
The truth will set you free.
Truth will set me free, so I'm going to say it.
Go ahead.
I am 100% for reparations with reconciliation. And I believe that the reparations must take the form of land, money, and that we should be paying, the federal government should set funds aside to fully fund HBCUs. They should fully fund education for Black Americans, residents, not even just Americans. They should fully fund economic opportunities for small businesses and any business, and they should fully apologize, as they did with Jewish, as they did with Japanese Americans, as they did with every other sector of this. If we have $8 billion to send overseas for Ukraine, we can pay for this right now with not just one more study. We don't need any more studies. Take care of it right now.
All right. Major Rosselli, are you for African Americans receiving reparations?
It's a complex subject.
Yes, it is.
Very complex subject. And the reason why I say that is because we're a melting pot. We have 1 million people a year that actually immigrate here into our country. And one of the most prosperous groups that is here, I believe, is an African American group of people that comes from Africa that become citizens here. So, but they weren't here then, okay? So what I'm trying to say is that, is it an important issue? Yes, it's an important issue.
Yes, sir.
But how about if we make that reparation to be something that benefits the community? Make it possible so that they can have more opportunities for businesses, more opportunities for trade education, make it more opportunities in these areas, and be able to uplift the community by ensuring that those services, those opportunities for progression towards a better life happens for everybody.
Right.
Because you're not going to be able to ferret out every single person that needs to have that particular reparation. But if we can make it so that we can uplift the entirety of the community, I believe that that's going to help the community much more.
All right, thank you so much,
You have
Major.
12 seconds left. We need a debate.
No, well, we're gonna move on. Yeah, yeah. Well, what we're gonna do is we're gonna move on, and you'll have a minute for the next one, and if you can do it in 30 seconds, if you want to rebuttal, that's fine. All right. So, how will you? Let's turn to policing in the African American community. How will you, or will you, enforce the George Floyd Act in District 8 with specific regards to African Americans? Let's talk about the George Floyd Act.
No, I think that's very important. We have to, as a representative of District 8, you have to remember to stay in tune with the district, especially when it comes to federal policies being done at the local level, because as a city council member, I know firsthand that it's the local level that has control over the police. And so in order to make sure that those acts are being carried out properly, I just don't want to send in DOJ to investigate District 8 right off the bat, but for me, it's about staying connected with organizations like the Safe Return Project, the Re-Entry for Success Center, the DA's office, and even, we have several community leaders throughout District 8 who are, they are fighting for justice when it comes to law enforcement. And so it's about staying in touch with those folks, making sure that the George Floyd Act is being carried out to the fullest extent here in District 8.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, I am not familiar with the George Floyd Act, but the same methodology is what I use for all the different issues, and that's to bring the community together, to have community dialogue, for the different sides to listen to each other, and I say it over and over again because it is the foundation of what we're doing of the House. If we do not have that foundation and that methodology set up, it's like nothing is going to work. And so what I've done, is we have set up an empathy circle. We call it Talk with Cops, and where we invited the police from around the country to have dialogues with the community. And we have those online, and we've shown those. And the discussion we had was, how do we bridge the divides in our community? So that was the type of work that I want to do, is bring all the stakeholders together to have those dialogues so that we can bridge those divides and come up with creative solutions that work for us together.
All right, thank you so much. Mr. Ryan.
It absolutely is a local issue with policing and police brutality. But I think it's good to be able to have, the DOJ oversight, because there are police communities that they try to protect their own in the unions, and there's too many cases that have gone by where people who have done things either illegally or just way out of hand or overreacting or anything, the punishment for small crimes shouldn't ever be death. So we have to have some sort of oversight that makes sure that there's accountability. Without accountability, it just perpetuates a cycle and puts targets not only on the backs of more people of color, but also on police officers. And I think that the policing in our communities needs to reflect the communities, it needs to be joined with the community. And as long as the federal government isn't intervening in that community building and community policing, I think it is a good thing to have that second layer of protection so that something can be done and those who commit crimes as police officers can be held accountable.
Thank you so much, Mr. Riley. Let's talk about the George Floyd Policing Act. How we enforce that?
The biggest thing is to make sure that police who violate or who commit crimes are part of the national database. That's the biggest thing, so that they cannot commit crime in one state and be hired, that they never are able to work as law enforcement again. This is the biggest thing, and on the federal level, you do have the ability to do that. And in making sure that that is enhanced and that is enforced is required as a federal official. No, you can't do local crime, but you can do that. And the other thing is that to stop this misnomer that the DOJ can only get involved when local law enforcement invites them in. No, we need to make sure that we are, anytime it looks like that there's a racial justice issue, that we have the Attorney General's office involved, period. That the federal government gets involved right away, because George Floyd, when we have a man who's killed on national television, that should have went straight to the feds automatically.
All right. Major Vasselli. Let's talk about George Floyd Policing Act. Will you, or how will you enforce it in this Congressional District 8?
I'm not very familiar with the George Floyd
Okay.
Act, so I'm not gonna.
That's fine.
I'm not gonna speak against it or for it.
Okay.
But I will say this: bad police are bad police.
Okay.
Bad police need to be identified. Bad police need to be processed just like any other person who committed a crime. They need to be, and we need to make sure that they don't work again in that area, because they probably shouldn't be if they're committing those types of crimes, okay? Regardless of what it is, whether it's police brutality, taking money under the table, whatever that is. We need to make sure that at the same time, we need to support our police. Because right now, one of the biggest problems that we have is that people are walking off the force, or they're moving to areas where they are more welcome. And if we do not have law enforcement policing our communities, the bad elements will take over. And someone has got to stand that line. And the people that are going to stand that line are the police.
Thank you so much. All right. I have relatives, family, and friends that live in Vallejo, Fairfield, Sassoon. We know black folks that live there. Black folks that live in Richmond, and Antioch, Pittsburgh, and all my brothers and sisters in Bay Point, right? That's where, so, and they're watching. They're watching tonight. And they're trying to, out of the 5 candidates on this stage, figure out who should they vote for. So my question to you, you're going to have 1 minute. Why should the average black person trust you to keep your word to the black community? And if you don't keep your word, Mr. Johnson, how should the black community respond?
Well, as I mentioned, this is not just the district where I grew up. This is the district where my mother and father grew up, my grandparents and my great-grandparents migrated to. So in terms of holding me accountable, that's a given. You know, whether that's taking me out to the shed or calling me and, having me offer up my neck. But for me, it's about, really staying connected to the community and letting folks know that there is no dichotomy between us. There's no pedestal to put me on. You guys tell me I represent you and I represent your interests. And if you feel as though that's not being done, I want everyone to feel comfortable enough to approach me in whatever manner they feel comfortable. Don't worry about whether or not I've accepted. Whatever you feel comfortable approaching me, I think that with this being a district that I always tell people I grew here, I didn't flew here. So for a lot of folks, it's a different kind of accountability for me. When I go to my class reunion at Pittsburgh High School, they want to know why I'm not holding certain things together, and so forth and so on throughout the district.
All right, Mr. Rudd, the average black person who may not have empathy, why should they trust you?
Well, I would hope that we develop empathy together, and the way to develop empathy together, because we need it. We need to be working together with each other and
Yes, sir.
developing relationships and connections with each other. I think you're a reverend too, right? So,
Yes, sir.
right. So they should be here in the church learning those skills.
Amen to that.
As well as learning those skills in education and working together with each other to learn those skills. And we'd have something, we have the Interfaith Empathy Cafe. So we're working with interfaith ministers to come together to dialogue with each other. We're working with the police to talk to each other. We have citizens coming together. So I want to bring citizens together to talk with each other. And if I go to Congress and come back and I'm not doing what you are needing to be done, we're going to talk about it. You're going to let me know because we're going to have these dialogues. But I'm going to hold everyone else accountable too to take part in these dialogues. So it's just not me being responsible. It's about mutual responsibility. Everybody's got responsibility, and I'm going to hold you accountable too for bridging the divides.
Yeah, some black folks don't trust politicians. They think they're fake. So how do you restore trust to the black community? Why should they trust you? And if you don't keep your word, what should they do to you?
You're absolutely right, and this is a great question. There's a great article on 538 right now that says that because black voters are so loyal, the Democratic Party takes them for granted.
Yes.
They take their vote for granted. They take the votes, but they never do any of the things that improve the communities or improves the lives.
Talk about
So part of it is being here, like all of us are, being here in the community with you, speaking to you. That's part of it. That's how we actually have to listen. We can't just be passing laws from on high and throwing them down at the black community saying, here you go, this is what we came up for you. It has to be something that we work together to create. And if you believe that I am not listening to you, if you believe that I am not addressing the issues that affect your daily life, then you should absolutely kick my butt out of office. I don't belong in office if I'm not listening to the black community, to the minority, to any community. Everybody deserves a voice. Everybody deserves to be heard. So if I do anything, if I ignore you, if I don't help your community at all, then I don't deserve to be in office. And I would just kick me right out because I don't deserve it.
All right, thank you so much. Ms. Sutter, I don't deal with you politicians. You guys get there and forget the black people that live in the community. You forget us, and this is why as a black person, I'm not even gonna vote. Doesn't even make sense to vote. Why should I trust you to keep your word? And if you don't, what should I do? Ms. Sutter.
First of all, I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant, but I'm not a politician.
Okay.
Secondly, let me just say this. And my grandmother used to tell us all the time, you keep your word no matter what. El nosotros no yo, concéntrese en la gente. So you focus on the people, the we, not the me. If you do that, you will always make the right decision. And people should always hold you accountable. And you should hold yourself more accountable than anyone else, right? And as the only person up here who's actually on the ballot, who has been entrenched in this community, who's done the work in this community, without a title and with a title, elected and unelected, who's been on every commission, who's worked in this community, who held herself accountable, won some elections, lost some elections, but still kept working in this community. As that person who's on this ballot, who has made sure that she's done the work, I hold myself accountable. And if I'm not gonna do the work, I'll put myself out of office.
All right, there it is. Major Rosella, we trust the military, right? Why should African-American voters, those that listen, why should they trust you? And if you don't keep your word, what should they do?
Well, you're hiring me, is what it boils down to. You're my boss. My job is to make sure that I inform the people of what's going on. And if I'm not doing that job, I don't deserve to be in this place. I don't deserve to be in that position. And they need to come up and talk to me and let me know what it is. I will endeavor to make sure that every time that I get done with a session in Congress, my job is then to come around to the communities and inform the communities of what's going on in Congress and what I'm doing for the community in Congress. And if I'm not doing that job, they'll have the opportunity to let me know. However, which way they want to let me know, but come up and have a dialogue, and I will get you with my staff, I will get it down, and we will work on it. And I will try to create the best transparency that I can as a congressperson so that they can see where I'm at, they can see what I'm working on. So, and if they don't like me, like Cheryl says, I'll take myself out.
All right, we're nearing the end. So what we're going to do, can we give just 30 seconds? I want to, before we go ahead and you give your your final plea to the voters. We'll start over here with Mr. Johnson. 30 seconds. You can talk about the people who have endorsed you, any organization, any VIPs or whoever, any politicians that have endorsed you. Go ahead.
I'm not going to get into all of the fancy names because I've been endorsed by the people. For the people of Richmond, the people of Pittsburgh, Antioch, Vallejo, Fairfield, and Sassoon, and that's why I'm running for District 8. It's not just about a political aspiration or about making noise to be seen. For me, as I mentioned before, this is an extremely personal endeavor. When I look at District 8, I look at folks whose needs are far past what any individual are willing or have been willing to do so far. And for me, I'm willing to go the extra mile for District 8.
All right, any endorsements?
Okay, so this is the first time I'm running, and I think the timer is going up here. So this is the first time I'm running, so I am looking for the endorsement of the citizens who are voting. So I haven't done the political route. I haven't gotten these endorsements. I'm looking for the endorsements of the public with the message of bridging our political divides and social divides.
All right, any endorsements?
So right now, the person that has the most endorsements isn't here, and I think it's important that that you're actually here listening to the people, talking to the people. So I don't know that they matter. Everybody's just trying to be safe and pick somebody who is taking advantage or taking for granted the people in this community and thinking that because he has big names that have endorsed him, he doesn't have to be at these conversations with the community. He doesn't have to be here answering your questions and holding himself accountable. So I hope that every person I meet wants to endorse me, but everybody here deserves an endorsement more than the people that didn't show up today.
All right. Endorsements.
I actually like what you just said, but I've been endorsed by BOAPA Contra Costa, BOAPA Salado County, Black Women Organizing for Political Action, LA African American Women's PAC, the ILWU Local 10, International, the Longshoremen's Union, Public Employees Union, over 100 of our fellow elected officials and appointed officials in Contra Costa County and Solano County, and many other individuals, and by numerous of our fellow neighbors. And I'm just pleased to be here. And I think that it is important that the person who lives 80 miles outside the district is not here with his giant list of endorsements. Thank you.
Thank you. Major Roselli, endorsements, sir.
Being the only Republican on the dais here,
Okay.
the Republicans support me.
Well, then you gotta have that.
So, I mean, I'm not going to lie about it. But bottom line up front is, it's the people.
Yes, sir.
I joined the military to serve the people, and that's why that's why I'm running. And that's who I want their endorsement.
All right. So we come to the end where we're going to give each candidate 2 minutes to give the final plea. What we want you to do is we want you to look right in that camera up there, and we want you to talk to the African American citizens of Congressional District 8 and let them know when they get in that booth and they see those names on the ballot, why they should vote for you. And we're going to start with Major Roselli, and then we're going to go all the way around. And then the last word will be from Councilman Johnson. We'll have final words, and then we will sign off. 2 minutes, Major Roselli. Why should they vote for you?
There is not one aspect of the United States of America that has not been touched by the African American community. Everything from a school teacher, from a janitor, all the way to the president, to the vice president of the United States. The African American community is a powerful, powerful community. You influence every aspect of the United States. Look, feel, walk, talk, down to food. African Americans are a base for our country. We are all Americans here. I'm running to represent all Americans, regardless of who they are. But the African American community is a very special community because they have the heart. They have community values. They have family values. They want to be empowered. And they are powerful. And when they come together, they are a very powerful force. The African American community needs people that are willing to step up to the plate. And I'm glad that every person up here is stepping up to the plate, because we need good people that have got the heart to go to Congress and fight for the people, because the people that are there are not getting it done. It doesn't make a difference if you vote for me or vote for my opponents, but you should know that every single person up here did not take this step forward to become a candidate lightly. I stepped forward because I took that oath, just like my mother took that oath when she came here from the Philippines. I took that oath, and no one is going to take that oath away from me to defend the people of this country, and not just with a gun, but with my words, my abilities, and my task to take care of the people.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Ms. Seth?
Where's the camera?
Right up there,
Right up there.
on that ledge. 2 minutes, talk to the African American citizens of Congressional aid. Why should they vote for you when they get in the booth? Why? We have options. Why you?
You've heard a lot this evening on differing opinions on subject matters dealing from education to policing and economics. And it's not enough to have hopes and dreams and even to talk about what could be and should be. Is what we have done and what we have concrete plans and vision. I've spent nearly 30 years here in this district, living here, working here, volunteering here, getting things done. With title, without a title. But working in coalition with unions, in community groups and organizations. Spending my life living in 12 different countries, negotiating billion-dollar deals in 9 languages. Working with the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, Department of Justice, traveling back and forth to the Washington, D.C. 6 to 8 times a year, working with the same congressional officials that I'll be working at when you send me to D.C. When people talk about experience, sometimes they talk about it as a limiting factor so that they can keep you out. We have a responsibility to make sure that we not choose just a person because they are black, I am, or Latino, or Asian American, or woman, or person with disability, or any of the things. I am all the things. But because I'm also very well experienced, very well educated, very well skilled, and with the capability of getting this job done, as I've proved time and time again for the last 30 years. It is not enough for people to claim deeds that other people have done as their own. As the only person up here on this ballot who has lived, served, and worked and volunteered in this district, every bit of it, I am the one who has the tenacity and the skill and ability to represent this district full force. And I will be honored with your vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sada. Mr. Riley.
Our nation is coming to, a very important point as we're coming to technology is advancing so fast. We have so many things that are coming to a tipping point when it comes to climate change, when it comes to education, healthcare. And I've had people who have told me, oh, Garamendi has more experience, or you don't have experience in Congress. I'm glad I don't have experience in that Congress that hasn't got anything done for 40 years. Why would I want experience not achieving anything? We need new people, new ideas that are gonna work tirelessly, not just for this year or this term, but for the rest of their lives, trying to achieve change. The Republican side has been very good at coining slogans lately with MAGA and what have you. But I think when I look at what we need, when I look at the American dream, we need to start to believe again. We need to make Americans believe again that this actually is a place where you can advance in life, where you can live with others, where there is hope for a future and hope for your children. And that isn't something that is happening right now with the current Congress that we have. We need voices that represent the younger generations, the generations like millennials and Gen X, but also minorities and people of color. Because those two groups right there won the election for Biden in 2020, and now their voices are being completely ignored. And because of that, the Democratic Party is at risk of losing the House in 2022 in this upcoming election. And because of that, Joe Biden is probably going to be impeached for absolutely no reason. So we need new voices that can combat against the Marjorie Taylor Greens and I can't even remember their names, and I'm glad I can't. But we need a new younger generation that will stand on the shoulders of the generation that came before us and keep progressing forward and moving this country into a more perfect union for all.
Thank you. Mr. Rudd.
Well, I'm going to build on what Chris said. Is I believe, and I believe very, very deeply, and I believe so deeply, I'm willing to stake my life on it, that we can bridge the political and social divides in our communities. We have families that are falling apart because of just family divisions. We have communities falling apart. We have the political divisions falling apart. So we have serious divisions in this country. And if you see that, if you're concerned about that, if you have concern and worry about it, that is what I'm here to address, because I believe deeply that we can address those issues, which are foundational to what is going on in our society. That we have to, if we can solve that, we can solve anything. Anything can be solved when people get together and listen to each other, because I'm a mediator, I've mediated conflicts, and I can mediate. Actually, we need to mediate in Congress as well. So I totally believe that we can do that. I've done it. And I'm willing to work with everybody here to do it, even if I don't win. In fact, I would vote for anybody here that I feel is better at bridging the divides and creating more empathy. So if you think you can do it better than I can, let me know. Maybe I'll step aside, because I would vote for you. If you're better than me, because that's what I am about, is to bridge those divides. And I'm sure I can do it, because I've been doing it. And I want to work together. We have the mayor of Pittsburgh here. I want to work with you in Pittsburgh. Let's bridge those divides in Pittsburgh. Let's bring the community together to talk with each other, because that's where it starts. It starts with dialogue. I wish we would have done an empathy circle instead of a debate, because an empathy circle models how we do the process. We did the empathy circle with Chris and Cheryl, and you can watch that, and you can see you're learning how to actually develop these skills. So that's what I'm saying. Let's do it. Let's work together. Contact me, edwin4congress.com, and we will work together. Whether I win or not, we'll keep working together on bridging those divides.
All right.
I'm gonna stand up, because the way I was raised, you stand up and you look at folks when you're begging. My name is Demlis Johnson III. I'm a Richmond City Council member, and I'm running for District 8 because this is home. This is something that we fought for, and this is something that we will continue to fight for in representation. You've heard the shade and the caps about folks being the only person on the ballot. Well, let me share something with you. Because we launched a real threat to the establishment, they had to counteract that with an attack on our campaign. And in trying to encourage us to get out of the race. This is what happens when black folks try to stand up for themselves. Not only did we have to fight for this district, but when we fought to get a candidate that can actually take on the establishment, they had to start pulling every trick and trade out of the book to encourage us to give up. But oh baby, I was raised in a black community, and we don't give up that easily. So I not only stand before you asking for your vote, I stand before you asking you to write my name on the ballot. Because I don't subscribe to the notion that some of my opponents do, that the black community is too lazy or too uninformed to write the name Johnson on a ballot. We fought for way more, and we will continue to fight, and I will continue to fight for you, with you, and on your behalf. You can see through all of the cap. That's why when he asked, how can you trust politicians, and how can I just sat back and laughed, because I said the black community is going to see through everything. And that's the community that I come from. That's the community that I represent, and that's the community that I will continue to fight for until my last dying breath. And not even being kicked off the ballot will stop me from fighting for you. So my name is Demlis Johnson III. And to quote the iconic entertainer from the 3rd Ward of Houston, I may be young, but I'm ready.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope and pray that you enjoyed this debate. Now, for a house note, we did invite Mr. Garamendi to this debate. He is taking care of business in Washington, D.C., and this is why he could not attend, but he was invited to participate in this debate. And so we hope that he has a safe trip back from Washington, D.C. You've learned a lot about the candidates, and we want you to make an informed decision. This forum has been brought to you by Building Black Political Power. It is a new group here in Contra Costa County that is building black political power for the residents, so to ensure that we have an equitable voice in the political process. We encourage you, those that are watching, those African Americans that are watching, not only to vote for the candidate you choose up here, but also to put some money in their campaign, because signs cost, t-shirts cost, websites cost. Am I right? Can I get an amen? Amen. Amen. Okay.
Amen.
Go ahead.
Amen.
And put some money behind the candidate that you choose. We are so excited that you were able to join us. And what we're going to do is, after we sign off, we're going to have a 1-minute break, and then we are going to have a debrief with some community activists here in this area to talk about some of the things tonight. We'll have a survey for those that are in the audience so that we can find out what we can do better. As we this is the first of many debates. This has been brought to you by East County North Star, which is the local paper for East Contra Costa County. Also, this debate sponsored by Freddie B's Barbecue. You need no teeth to eat my beef. All right. Amen. Is it all right? Go to Freddie B's or go to Dad's Barbecue. Go to black-owned businesses. We want you to support black-owned nail shops, black-owned salons, black-owned barbershops. Go ahead and spend your money black. All right? So invest in yourselves. And so as we sign out in the words of the great Reverend Martin Luther King, as I travel along, if I can heal someone with a word or a song, if I can show someone he's living wrong, then my living will not be in vain. If I can do my duty as a Christian, if I can bring salvation to the world once wrought, if I can spread the message as the Master taught, then my living will not be in vain. My name is Dr. Lamont Francis. Until the next time, we are wishing you peace, love, and soul. God bless. Good night. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope that you enjoyed tonight's debate. For bonus tonight, we have the debate coverage. We have community activists here that we're going to introduce shortly, and we're going to go ahead and debrief on the debate tonight. It was spirited. There were some highs and lows, and we're going to talk about it. And we want you, those who are watching online, to go ahead and chat about it. Talk about it in the chat room. What you like, what you didn't like, what candidate you think you're going to endorse. Feel free to speak your mind tonight. Tonight, we are delighted that you can tune in with us. I am Dr. Lamont Francis, Senior Pastor of the Delta Bay Church of Christ, as well as Administrator of the Mount Diablo Unified School District. And tonight, we are happy to have Mr. Alonzo Terry, who is with us tonight, who's a former school board member. And then we have longtime member of the NAACP. We have Ms. Green, and she is going to give her take on the debate tonight. So we are elated that you can join us tonight for our debate coverage. And so tonight we had several candidates, and we're going to talk about some of the highlights and from the debate and some of the things that we want to discuss. We had Miss Cheryl Sudduth that was here, Edwin Rush. We had Rudy Rosselli, the only Republican there on the panel. We had Councilman Dimlis Johnson, and then we had the educator, Mr. Christopher Riley. All right. So we'll start with Mr. Terry. Let's talk about some of the highlights of the debate. What candidate stood out for you tonight?
Well, basically, they all kind of stood out, and some of them stood apart also. I was trying to figure out the first 60 seconds who got my attention for my needs and the people I know, their needs. The question, basically, you start off is about the community, about the percentage, and I think what's the young man, the empathy, the educator, what's his name?
Mr. Rutch.
Rutch. I think he kind of said it himself. He more so of a mediator. I can't see myself voting for him to represent me. But he used the term empathy, like it was a sales pitch or something. But empathy is needed. But I wasn't here for a sales job.
Okay.
Or interview for somebody to sell. But if he could help the community come together, I think he needed to do it on the ground. That's what is needed to start, okay, with the families, with the community, with the schools. But to actually vote for him, that would be very difficult for me to do and advise. My brother, Republican, who made a comment, well, he gonna get the Republican vote. Okay, you go ahead. Some of the things he said that stood out that I agree with is where is the money and where you get the money.
Okay.
And that always had to be something that had to be in the forefront. And most candidates couldn't really answer that question. They gave us the political speech, but he hit it right on the head. I was impressed when he said that, but when he said about reparation, he lost me, right? I cut him off. He couldn't understand it. I believe he's a Filipino. Did he mention that? He couldn't see why is needed when it was a question for the Japanese and everyone else.
Yeah.
But it's always a question when it comes to us. So I was kind of displeased with that. But he made it clear he didn't need my vote. And so I'm not worrying about him at this point. The young lady, what's her name, Cheryl?
Yes. Cheryl Sudduth.
Strong woman. She made it clear what she did in the past, what she's doing today, and what she'd like to do tomorrow. I was extremely impressed with her. And you asked, what can he do? The thing is, can you move people? One thing about politics, you can say a lot of stuff sitting here, but if you can't move other people to get what you need done, your agenda that's for our people, you're gonna have a hard time. She's gonna have a hard time in certain areas because she had to be able to pull people to her, not push people away. And some of the things she was kind of saying that I didn't need a spiel or a speech, because you ask specific questions, what can you do and what you're willing to do. And the answer I would have gave, I'm not up here, is I'm going to do what I can as long as I can find people, the empathy person, to sit down and to be able to talk with other people to get them to do what we need as a whole for our people, with our people, by our people. With the guy who's teaching, what's his name?
Okay, Mr. Riley, Christopher Riley.
No, the other guy.
Teacher?
The teacher.
Yeah, Riley.
Riley.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Riley, and the reason why I can't remember the names is I was working the clock, so my mind was just paying attention to what they were saying was sort of their name. You know, he reminded me of a big teddy bear with a big heart, but I don't think he could move anybody. Because that's a doggy-doggy world in Washington and in our political arena. And you could be big, but if you're not strong and you're not committed to what you really believe and the public believe that put you there, I don't know if he would stand strong. I'm not comfortable with him yet. I need to hear from him again and see what he's really about. But if I was to speak to the crowd today and say, do you support him, I would have to say, no, he's not the one for me.
All right. And what did you think about candidate Councilman Johnson? I think you covered everyone.
Yeah. Again, Mr. Johnson, strong speaker, seemed like he's real passionate about what he wanted to do, and he talked about his history. It's hard to actually critique him because he's so passionate about who he is and what he's about. But the thing is he a talker or is he a doer?
Okay.
See, Cheryl was a doer by what she said. If everything she told us is true, she's a doer. Everything I heard from him is more so a talker, and that's the impression I have. But I think he also is a strong person that I don't think he would back down when things come his way. Mm-hmm. I think he's adamant about, he's a fighter. He's not a person I think would bend over and walk away and moonwalk.
Wow.
That's my impression.
All right. Now, you know, when you get Alonzo Terry, you're going to get it real, you're going to get it raw, with no chaser, okay? And that's why we have him on this panel tonight. Ms. Green, a long-time freedom fighter for the NAACP. What are some of the highlights as you sat here for the entire hour-and-a-half debate?
Well, I think most of the candidates came prepared for the debate. I'm not sure that they prepared for the job ahead of them. And I think Alonzo kind of stole the thunder from all of us because he really critiqued it good.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mr. Riley, his passion is there. I think he's serious about what he's talking about, but I think that he haven't hit the road running yet. He needs the experience, and I'm not sure that he could withstand the job. Mr. Johnson,
speak more to the mic.
He also spoke as a write-in candidate. I've never experienced a write-in candidate winning the race so far. And I think that he is passionate, he is on the city council, but in order to win a race like this, you're gonna really need to be on the ballot. I go to Cheryl. Cheryl actually explained what she had been doing. I believe she is really ready to hit the road. I don't know whether she has enough resources behind her, but I would like to see her stay in this race.
All right, thank you.
Could I ask you a question, Ms. Green? Because you mentioned Cheryl last, and do you think she more could bring people to her for the cause, or you think she would push people away? What did you get from her?
Well, I think this session was about the black community, and I don't see her pushing any blacks away.
Okay. All right.
Anybody on this board that you've seen would push more so than poor?
Say that again.
Anybody on this debate today, you think they more so would win votes, because pulling people together as a team is what we need, to win a race, and two, if they win, are they in a position to make sure what we ask for at least have a fighting chance?
I think Cheryl has that chance.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think Mr. Johnson would have, but as I spoke before, that he's a write-in candidate, and I don't think a write-in candidate can win this race.
All right. All right. So when it came to the question about job opportunities, creating job opportunities for African Americans in Congressional District 8, who do you think had the best answer?
None of them.
None of them?
None of them. None of them have the best answer. Because it was just a political speech. I mean, you work in the trenches. You know, everybody said we could get this and do this and do this, but what's the reality? You know, if they was down to earth with what they said, they would have thought about all these 30 years they said they've been putting in on us, and we still at square one.
Okay. Okay. Who do you think, Ms. Green, gave the best answer in terms of how to provide jobs for African Americans in Congressional District 8? So out of those 5 candidates.
Well, I think that Mr. Riley spoke to some of the points. I think Cheryl also, and I think Mr. Johnson spoke to some of them.
All right, all right. So in terms of education, as we talk about education for African Americans in Congressional District 8, we talked about some of the disproportionality that exists among African American students. Out of those 5 candidates, who do you believe gave the best answer on how to improve educational outcomes?
Well, are you saying best or truthful?
Okay.
Which one are you saying?
Well, let's start with the truthful. Let's go with truthful, Mr. Terry.
My empathy man.
Empathy.
He gave it starts at home, then start in the neighborhood, then start in the community, and bring people together. And you know, those who my age and older, we understand. In order to survive in our community, we have to have the community to work together. We got teachers scared of our kids, scared to teach because they don't know if they could teach right or teach to the test, so we lose. So when he said empathy, when we get together and talk about what's true and what's real, he more so could say, let's get the group together. Everybody else, again, they said all the things that we've been saying since George Jefferson. It just, the same thing.
It's a stump speech?
Yeah, it's not working, it haven't worked until we can figure out our pastors, our leaders to actually say, okay, let's get into the schools.
Okay.
You know, let's be a parent for the parents.
All right.
When I grew up, we all could testify, my number 1 coach, my 2, 1 particular teacher, maybe 2. And then I had my dear and everybody else in that community to make sure I stayed straight and stayed firm. But again, if I can't read, it's hard for me to teach my child how to read.
All right, all right. All right, I think the public wants you to, they got to hold the mic up here, Ms. Green. Who do you think answered the question out of those 5 candidates best on how to improve educational outcomes for African Americans? Out of those 5 candidates.
I think Mr. Johnson did a fair job.
Okay, fair job. All right, so Mr. Johnson, you would say. All right, just a few more questions. Let's talk about reparations. Now, they had 1 minute to talk about, are you for or against reparations for African Americans? And that is a hot topic, okay? Which candidate you believe gave the best response or the most truthful response, Mr. Terry?
Like you said, it was 1 minute, but it take 1 second. We need it, yes. And I don't think in that whole 60 seconds, somebody really just said yes, because that's a simple question. Either we do or we don't. My Republican friend, he's not feeling it. Again, he's out. But everybody else gave that same old speech, if. We heard it before. How many times have we heard that if? I want my 40 acres in my meal.
Okay.
I give the meal to you, but give me the 40 acres.
So, which candidate do you believe gave the best response? You have to roll with one.
Cheryl.
Cheryl?
Yeah.
Cheryl, you believe gave the best response. Okay, what about you, Ms.
I
Green?
think Cheryl definitely gave the best response.
Cheryl gave the best response. Okay. About community policing, the George Floyd Act, right? We're talking about accountability for police officers. We're talking about body cams, right? We're talking about eliminating certain chokeholds, right? That's the George Floyd Police Act. Which candidate do you believe gave the best response?
It was two of them, Mr. Johnson and Cheryl. But I actually have to go with my Republican friend also as the third. You know, we as a family have to educate our kids about the police.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is the police that we have to make sure they are accountable for their actions. And the only way we could do that is starting with the chief on down. It's the chief who we pick who allow things to go on and turn the other cheek. I believe there's more good police officers than bad.
Okay.
But I think we hold or transfer the bad ones to other departments, and that bad or negative energy keep going.
So they should lose their jobs, definitely.
Right then and there.
All right. Which candidate, Ms. Green, do you believe gave the best response?
I believe Cheryl gave the best response. I think Mr. Riley tried to address it a little, but I'll definitely pick Cheryl.
Okay, definitely pick Cheryl. So we talked about the candidates. 5 candidates were not on stage, but there was one that was missing, right? Mr. Garrett Mendy unfortunately could not make this particular debate. Now, the first question we talked about is, in a congressional district where 62% of the people are people of color, do you believe it's important to have a person of color representing us in Washington?
Of course.
Why? Why is that, Mr. Terry?
Because
Why?
a fat man don't know how to be skinny. He know how to be fat. A skinny man don't know how to be fat because he's skinny. And so sometimes facts is facts. It's hard. How you gonna have somebody who can represent a black person who don't know black people?
Okay.
So, you know, every other race have somebody there to make sure they are taken care of. And we say, okay, let's get real. If you've never been in the black community, you never broke bread with black people, you never understood what black people.
But what if that candidate has endorsements from well-noted black politicians and important people? What if that white person has that?
It's shame on them black people.
Okay.
Because if you don't think we have enough qualified black person in our community, we got problems. We got problems. You can't tell me all the black people in this world, we can't find a black person to represent us.
Okay.
Then we got problems. Then we need to find Jesus or whoever we believe in and get it right.
All right. Ms. Green, do you believe Mr. Garrett Mendy, who is not African American, he's not a person of color, can he represent a district that's predominantly 62% minority?
Well, I want to ask a question. Maybe you can answer it for me. Does he live in this community?
Not to my knowledge. He does not live in Congressional District 8, not to my knowledge.
Well, I don't see him coming into a black community to represent us. He doesn't live here. He's not black. One of the things that we are struggling with is to get representation that's going to represent us and help us through some of the struggles.
Okay. And we know one of the reasons why this congressional district was formed was to give people of color more of a voice in Washington. And so that's something I think we definitely need to consider. Okay, as we come to a close, and I know it's been a very long night, we talked about, well, let's cover the last question. Why should the average African American living in Richmond, living in Hercules, living in Pittsburgh, living in Antioch, Fairfield, Sassoon, why should they trust that particular candidate? And they all gave that answer. And if you didn't keep your word, what they should do. Which of those 5 candidates gave, in your opinion, the best response?
I'm trying to figure out, one of them said they'll tap out, they'll quit, they'll walk away. That's what I was expecting. I think somebody said vote them out. That's too long before we can vote them out. I think if you can't keep your word, you're not a word of your bond, then you should resign.
Okay.
We shouldn't have to spend all this money to get you out. We shouldn't have to get all these signatures. If you can't keep your word, and your word is bond, and we're in the church, and they gave their word.
Okay.
Okay, so you're not only lying to me, you're lying to the Holy Spirit.
Now, you know you're not a politician, right?
That's
you
correct.
You held up an office. You held a political office.
Correct.
You understand the burden that comes from the public. People want you to vote this way when you were there on the school board, right? And you were appointed to that particular position. You actually ran. You know how tough it is to run a campaign. The time, the sweat, the tears, the effort that it takes doing coalition building. You understand these things. So you understand some of the pressures that they would be under. Is it hard to keep your word as a politician?
Well, it depends on how you was raised. Because my mom believed you keep your word, or it's a consequence for your word. And you didn't want to break your word to my mother.
You made some unpopular decisions as...
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. And
On the school board.
And I stood by it.
And you stood by
I
it.
stood by it. And I got punished for it, but that's okay. Because I knew I did the right thing for the right reason.
Okay.
And so I could look at myself, and may God bless my mom so that she would have been proud of her son, that he was true to his word.
Okay. Which of those 5 candidates do you believe would keep their word and have the same Brother Terry spirit, Alonzo Terry spirit, that says, even if it's unpopular, it's the right thing to do? When I go to Washington, I said, this is the promise I made to the people. I'm going to keep it no matter what. Even if it costs me re-election. Out of those 5 candidates, which one do you believe would embody that spirit?
Today, neither one of them gave me that spirit.
None of the 5.
They gave me a political answer. They gave me the answer I've been hearing for years. None of them sparked me with say, okay, that's the person that I know would stand tall and stand proud. You just said it's a doggy field in the political arena.
Yes, it is.
We could say anything we want today. Oh, I will. And when you get in that room, it's a whole different ballgame. And everybody can't stand the pressure. And if you can't stand the pressure, what's that? If you can't
stand
stand the heat, get out the kitchen?
Get out the kitchen.
Okay. None of them today didn't say anything different than I heard before that would tell me they could get in that kitchen and cook with the best today. And remember, this is the only first time we're actually having this. So I need to make a final decision on someone. It's like a date. You don't put all your eggs in the basket
The
on
first date. That's true.
So it had to be a second time, maybe even a third time, that you could make, in my mind, a legitimate, reasonable decision opposed to just one in, one out.
There are a lot of people out there, Mr. Terry, that think like you. What do you need that candidate to say?
Show you right.
Show you
By
right.
your action. Show you right. I think somebody made a song off that.
Show you right.
Show you right.
Well, the Bible says you know a tree not by the bark, but by the
That's
fruit.
it. And they barked a lot.
Okay.
There's only one person. The empathy was more ground level. He wouldn't get my vote, but he was more ground level that talked about what the community needs. And nothing about him tell me that's the person I want to go represent me. Now, he could go be a mediator, and he said that on his own. If he can't win,
Yeah, that's what he said.
yeah, mediate. Okay, you got a mediation job.
Yes.
I'll pay for it.
There it is. He just seems like a very nice guy. All right. Which of these 5 candidates that we just heard, you got to speak into the mic, Ms. Green, do you trust to keep their word? Ms. Green, come on, give us some mature wisdom.
Well, I'm thinking about that, but when I've experienced during my life of working into politics, that candidates say a lot of things to us. But when they get in that room with people don't look like us, and they have their agenda, that oftentimes they'll send the blacks out to do their agenda. That's what I worry about. That's a big concern because it happens over and over again. But if I had to pick one tonight, I believe I would pick Cheryl.
All right. Thank you so much. We do have a live audience here, and we thank you so much for attending. We thank you for those that are watching online. It's been a long night. We're going to let you go tonight. We want you to make an informed decision before you go vote for the person that's going to represent us in Washington, D.C. It's very important that you do your research online, that you really get a chance to know the candidate, know their platform, and make an educational decision. African Americans, black folks, listen up. This is our time. We have to make sure that our vote counts. Once you find a candidate that embodies what you feel that person should be, that's going to represent you in Washington, make sure that you put some money behind that particular candidate. So, on behalf of Building Black Political Power, we thank you so much for watching. We want you to go ahead and tune in to our next debate that we will have, and we will let you guys know when that happens. And we will be doing more of these events and stuff like that. And so we will let you know in advance so that you can continue to tune in and watch the things that we are doing in this community. We are just regular citizens. We are community activists and leaders. We are regular citizens trying to make a difference for our people in this community. So, in the words of Fred Hampton, we say peace to those who are willing to fight for it. Thank you so much for watching, and good night. I'm Dr. Francis. Take care.